What's going on, beautiful people? If you're thinking about learning guitar as an adult, then this video is for you. I started learning guitar in my 30s, and this is what my first year looked like. For those of you new to the channel, my name is Jericho Black, and I've been doing music for several years now as an occupation. And why I started learning guitar late, as people would say, I'm sure most people would say late in life, is kind of funny. I've been doing music as an engineer and producer and working on other people's records and doing really behind the scenes work. I haven't been on many stages or anything like that. And at this juncture in life, why I started playing guitar or why I even thought about getting a guitar was I was having a baby. And when that was the case, I was thinking, what am I going to do sitting around all day with the baby, outside of course, being a good dad? But what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my hands? I like to stay busy. So that was the initial thought and inspiration to go guitar shopping. I wanted to make my last big boy purchase. So that's what I did. I went and I didn't hold back on this thought, right? I think I bought three guitars before I landed on the one that I ended up having for about a year, if that. But that's where I made the mistake. So I got an American Ultra, and what I did was those three guitars, I didn't keep them all. I bought them and returned them and landed on the one that I kept. But they were all ultras, as I didn't know much about the different models of guitars and the different specs and what they felt like and things like that. I saw good reviews on the Ultra and I checked it out, and I did like it. I thought it was cool, but I also didn't know what I liked as a guitar player, of course. So I landed on the Ultra, and it was great. Great tones, well, as far as I knew at the time, and it played really well. It was a beautifully manufactured guitar. However, when I did play other guitars, just going into Guitar Center and messing around, I did find another feel that I liked. But there are a lot of gear choices and it can be overwhelming. So I think that's why I landed on the Ultra and just kind of stayed on that path for those options that I was choosing. And really, I was just choosing for looks. So I found the one that I liked the look of the most and grabbed that. But when it came to comfort and feel, as I learned more songs, there were some songs that didn't feel as comfortable to play on that guitar. And when I messed around on other guitars, they felt better or somewhat easier. And I think that's an important part about learning how to play is it should feel easy. It not easy, learning the bare basics or just picking it up for your first time, but it should feel good, and if you know a little bit of your workaround and certain songs feel difficult on one instrument but a little bit easier on the next, then make note of that and make note of the specs and what differences that may be, because that could be a part of your comfort and your niche. When it came to bedroom practice and learning the fundamentals, I would say this is where I kind of had a little bit of a leg up. I did study music in college. I studied jazz piano and studied some theory. So I understand how to build chords. I understand music for the most part and how it's built in the formulas that make good sound. So when it came to that aspect, I had an understanding of the number system. I had an understanding of scales and just what they applied to and things like that. So really it was learning the shapes, learning the layout of the guitar itself as an instrument. And I practiced. I practice a lot, and regardless if I know the scales, I still ran them down. I put on a metronome, I time it, and I do systematic practice so that I can just get some good technique and bring that along the journey of learning new songs, building as a guitar player, and so on and so forth. I didn't walk into it with the mindset I have now, but I definitely want this to be a profession. So we go full speed. What I will say about practicing with a metronome is there were a lot of frustrating moments. There were moments of thinking, if I practice with a metronome and speed it up, that I will be a faster player or I will get faster. But that's not necessarily the case. I did learn that speed comes from understanding. It comes from your knowledge of the guitar and the layout, or any instrument rather. It just comes from you knowing through and through confidently where that next note is going to be. It doesn't really come from practicing faster. Now, with that said, I do have an interesting practice technique that I employed that I did feel worked better than speeding the metronome up or even slowing it down. So, for certain songs, I know specifically Master Blaster was one that was challenging for me for a good while. And how I tackled it, or what felt like it worked fast for me, was I was slowing the metronome down at first and playing and dialing it in and then going to tempo, and I wouldn't be able to nail it. And what ended up working was speeding up the metronome faster than the original BPM of the song and dialing that in for a few times. And of course, you're going to make even more mistakes because you're speeding up the metronome faster than what you can play it at already. However, it's a weird psychology thing that happens, I think, with the body. Is you're attempting to land those notes faster. You may miss the mark on the faster tempo, but when you slow it back down to actual speed, it's slower than you're used to playing it, and you kind of are locked into that tempo a little bit better. So that worked for me. I suggest give that a go and let me know how it works for you. So going from bedroom practice, let's talk about my first rehearsal. So first rehearsal with a live band, and even how I met with the band. So there's an app called Vamper that is quoted or marketed as the dating app for musicians, but it's not necessarily for dating. It's for musicians looking for others to collab and work with. So I was on the app and I found a group of people that were starting a band, and we locked in and were able to get a rehearsal scheduled. So first rehearsal, I pull up, and I'm not gonna lie, I was really nervous, man. I'm nervous to see if I can keep up and hopefully, even maintain the slot. These are guys that in my mind have rehearsed together already, so they already know their parts, and I'm coming in kind of listening to the records that were already made and seeing if I can play to that. So yeah, man, it was nerve-wracking. What ended up happening was okay. It I got in where I fit in, where I didn't have something to play. I laid out and listened. And that is a key thing that you need to have in the pocket if you want to play live. Listen. Listening is more important than playing. So that was that experience. And then I ended up actually rehearsing with that band for months. We didn't do a gig, but we did rehearse. Things that I learned in that rehearsal space would be, one, it's very important to just stay locked in timing wise, and make sure you're synced with the group you're playing with. That's the most important part. Not ripping or having flashy runs or lines. That's really on the wayside. As long as you can stay in the pocket and groove, you're gonna get picked. You're gonna get the slot. So that was what I learned the majority of that phase. And yeah, I didn't end up gigging with that band that I rehearsed with, but I did meet someone in communications with that band that locked me in with my first gig. And let's talk about that. The first gig experience was insane. It was incredible. Matter of fact, mentioning that, I had my first gig, I want to say it was either June or July, and it was at a really dope venue called the Press Club. And circling to, we're in January of 2026, circling to the New Year's Eve slot I got selected for, which I was incredibly grateful to perform New Year's Eve. It was at Press Club, man. Full circle. Beautiful moment. First gig was brutal. It was brutal. We were told, well, I was told, we're going to play everything true to the record. So, don't worry too much. Don't stress. Just get the records dialed and then we'll have a good show. And it was, a cover band experience. So we were playing popular records. And I learned my parts and I came, and one, I had a little 25-watt solid state amp, which was crazy to show up to that with. But I did have the Fender Tone Master Pro, so I went direct as well as plugging into the amp. So it was just for stage monitoring, which sounded horrible, I'm sure, because I wasn't aware of cab simulations or IRs and how to plug into front of amp with a modeler. I was all over the place, man. But we played, and I I must have did okay because I started getting gigs again, but we didn't play it true to the record. They went into complete jam sessions and multiple songs, and I was lost. And it was a real learning moment and experience to say, okay, learn the record, but learn how to flow and learn how to take it wherever the band may go. So be on the learning curve. How did it feel to play in front of people? Well, I may have stated that I haven't been on many stages, but I have been on a few. When I played in college jazz piano, I did have some showcases where I played in front of people and kind of got the jitters out, I guess you would say, on what it feels like to perform an instrument live. And I think in that setting, I kind of just went in autopilot and just tuned into my instrument, I didn't really worry about the people out there listening or paying attention. And at the very least, I was just hoping that they would be having a good time. And if I kept the groove, then mistakes are more noticeable than a lock in. So so just keep the groove. Now moving on to regular gigging and set list changing and growth as a player and performer. Man, it happened fast. So every new gig was a new set list. I even did a gig where it was playing with a DJ, and a few gigs rather, where you're backing a DJ, your live accompaniment to whatever he or she is playing in the mix. So with that, there is no script. You don't have a template. You don't have really any grounds of comfort. You just go in and play, and you find the key when they play it. And if they mix into another song, you find the next key and you keep playing. And really, those for me are, I would say, the toughest gigs right now, because finding the key of the song, I can do it, but doing it smooth and tasteful where you're not noticing that I'm sifting around finding it is what I'm learning how to do now. So it's coming, but that's definitely something to note for me. But with different set lists and how I approach learning and practicing with that, I have a YouTube playlist that I put all these songs on, and I let them run and I play along, and I take notes. And it started with just taking notes of the key and then maybe writing down a chord progression if I needed to, or writing down something for me to note the melody, if I'm playing the melody, or if I'm playing the lead vocal type deal, or if it's something to keep me registered with the song. Like, okay, yeah, I can look at that and I have a point of reference. That was the start. And then I got to this. This is my new bread and butter. So now when I get a set list, and especially if it's a song that is a little challenging or has some changes, has a bridge with, different parts and things like that, or intricate melodies, something like that, I write out the song. You might not be able to see that on cam, but it's just a rough chord chart that I write out for songs that are challenging, or maybe the whole set list if I feel it and have the time to do so. And that has become my formula. May not work for everybody, but it definitely helps me lock it in, and it gives me a different point of reference again. Like if I just make a small note on a smaller notepad, but I have that already written out, it's just different channels of practice, I would say. One cool thing that I will say about playing live that I can definitely say is different than bedroom practice is you have moments where you get comfortable, or you're locked in and you feel yourself able to express a little bit more. And there's moments where I do things live that I haven't practiced or haven't even attempted. Could be fast runs, it could be flurries, or like it could be arpeggios, it could just be, something I think of in the moment that I may not have practiced and dialed in, that I just go for. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the point of it is, it has definitely evolved my skill set and chops when I practice, because it gives me something to think about, like, oh, what was that lick that I did? And if I recorded it, then I can go back and look at the video, or if I just remember it from, the thought at the moment, and can go back and dial it in. Oh man, it's been a dream to have those opportunities. It's just been a dream to dial in those opportunities, because it's definitely built me as a guitar player, and I definitely have a few more licks under my belt than when I started. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what comes from just more and more gigs. And that's another thing to note. Going back to Master Blaster, like as a point of reference, it's not a fast song, but when I was learning it, I had to slow it down in order to digest it. When I play that song live, there's something about the adrenaline maybe that makes it feel slower than when I'm practicing it and trying to get every note right. So that's also something to think about if you're contemplating going from bedroom to playing live, or if you're ever thinking like, I just don't have the nerves for playing live. Come on, man, just give yourself one shot and see how you feel, because one, it's pretty cool, and two, it's not it's not all it's chalked up to be. It begs the question, what am I still struggling with? I would say, obviously, technique is always something to work on. I'm not struggling with technique. I just need to practice, right? We all need practice, and I need a lot more of it. I'm a beginner player, I'm brand new with it, but I definitely know that I miss plenty of notes, and a lot of the notes that I miss are notes that I'm going for intentionally, and I know what I'm doing. I just may not have grabbed it right or applied the right pressure, or there's sometimes I go for a bend and I overshoot it and bend a little sharp. Sometimes I underbend, so little things like that that I know I definitely still have to dial in. Some things I wish I knew earlier would be the amp scenario, or the amp situation, because your amp is just as important, or if not more important, than the guitar you choose. I only knew about guitars really, so well, I didn't even know about guitars. I knew I wanted a guitar, and I didn't know enough about amps to spend any kind of money on an amp, but I spent good money on my guitar because I wanted it to be something that would last or stand the test of time, or I don't know, maybe just the terrible capitalist mentality is like if you spend more money, it'll be a better product. So I guess I kind of fell into that and wanted something that I was like, okay, this is a good guitar. I have no excuse to not be a good player, right? So there was that. And I would say knowing about amps earlier would have helped me out a lot and probably saved me from buying a lot of gear and pedals and that rabbit hole, because I did start with, I think it was the Dream 65, the UAD Dream 65, and that was my amp. And I guess granted I didn't have the space to really play an amp loud like I do now. I can play an amp in here, but I still, I know now that I don't feel the guitar the same way out of studio monitors that I do out of an actual amplifier cabinet. And that is fact. The feel of playing through an amp is just something different. So I would say definitely, if you're gonna go and get a guitar, get you a good tube amp. You know, it doesn't have to be a huge one. A bedroom one would be a good 5 watt amp. There are good 1 watt amps. There are also plenty amps with attenuators. So yeah, I would say don't shell out and blow all your budget on a high price guitar. Get you a good amp too, for sure. So when it came to time management and balance between family, work life, and playing guitar, it really was, I guess, I think if the right term is a caveat for my situation, because being that I am an audio engineer as a profession, I make my schedule and I book my clients according to what my availability is. And I also started doing real estate, and that is kind of like a make your own schedule type of deal, but it is an eat what you kill business. So you have to be out there. And yeah, on top of all of that, I was taking care of the baby. So being that I had that type of flexible schedule, I was there with the baby during the day, and then my hours would be at night. And so throughout the day, you know, she's a baby. She wasn't walking at the time. She wasn't super busy, so she would sit there and hang out with me, and I'd play for her. And that was the initial start. And as she's gotten older, gotten busier, she's she's a handful. So a lot of times now I have to set the guitar down and chase her around. But there are times she does let me play, and outside of that, I do, of course, you know, at nighttime I probably drink my second coffee around 6, 7 p.m., 5 sometimes, and then I'm up throughout the night and I jam out and I play and I practice and I rehearse with myself into those backing tracks and things like that. I prepare for shows. So it's still a workaround on how I balance the schedule. But you know, when you want to do it, you get it done. You when you love it, you just do it. There's still days where I spend hours on the guitar and don't even realize. So yeah, it's really just how you apply it, because some days I don't have the time, some days I don't have the hours to allot to playing. So my practice time, like I said, is strategic. I do make sure that I put in at least 30 minutes a day, and that 30 minutes even is broken down into a specific plan of how I'm going to just get my fingers moving. So I recommend that you have some type of structured plan, because it does help you grow. Some lessons that I learned and some advice that I would give to anybody looking to play, of course, would be good practice tips. You know, like employ good practice strategies, rather. You know, I use YouTube University like anybody else. You know, you don't have to always allot a budget outside of buying the instrument and buying the amplifier and buying pedals and all. You know, it is an expense. So buying lessons on top of that can be cumbersome. So Yeah, use YouTube University. Use all of the free tools that we have allocated to us, and I would say employ a good practice routine. And instead of looking for good licks or learning specific songs all of the time, I would highly recommend that you find certain lessons or certain techniques or things like that that open up the mindset and give you a new perspective on the instrument. Because I will say my greatest aha moments didn't come from a certain lick or didn't come from learning a certain song. Well, I won't say learning a certain song, because within those songs come different understandings when you get a different part dialed. But I'll say those aha moments came from realization on the guitar, like, oh, this applies to this and I can use this over here as well. I can play this over here. This fits in this song as well as this song, or as long as this rhythm or this pocket, or things like that. I don't want to be long-winded on that, but definitely find things that give you an understanding of the instrument rather than just one lick. So yeah, this is me as a beginner guitarist in this journey. First year in, I started playing, I guess we'll say 2024. It's January of 2026, so almost 2 years. And yeah, what challenges are you guys facing right now? I'd love to hear. Comment below what are your favorite milestones or what part of the journey you're on at this moment. And of course, if you like this type of content, be sure to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and stay tuned for the rest of the journey, because it's going to get sick. New Year coming.